our dedicated Facebook Live series. Today's session is about the internal audit recruitment market, and I'm joined by Russell Bunker, Director, Internal Audit Division at Barclay Simpson. Having recruited internal auditors and IT auditors since 1989, Barclay Simpson have a deep understanding and extensive network of contacts in this specialist market. This allows them to quickly source the most appropriate candidates for any role, and also to offer real choice and direction to those seeking a new role, whether on an interim or permanent basis. As internal audit becomes ever more specialised, Barclay Simpson can help source candidates with very specific skills, be it in areas such as mainstream banking operations, data analytics, project management, quality assurance, or third parties. They tailor their recruitment approach to the needs of our clients. So grab a tea or a coffee and join me as we delve into the internal audit recruitment market and try and find out where all the internal auditors have gone. So an introduction first, if I may. I'm Liz Sandwith, and I'm the Chief Professional Practice Advisor for the Chartered Institute of Internal Auditors UK and Ireland. The Chartered Institute is the only professional body dedicated exclusively to training, supporting and representing internal auditors in the UK and Ireland and across all sectors. We have approximately 10,000 members across all of the sectors of all of the economy, all parts of the UK and Ireland. Members are part of a global network of over 200,000 members in 170 countries, all working to the same international standards and codes of ethics. May I also remind you that you can acquire CPE points for these Talk to Internal Audit sessions. So don't forget to log them using our CPE template. Details of how to claim CPE from this live stream can be found in the comments section. So today's topic, where have all the internal auditors gone? As internal auditors, we need to be relevant to the business that we serve. We have to adapt to the change in the audit methods, technologies, and new areas that were not in the internal audit plans in the past. For example, cyber, climate. The resourcing challenge further exacerbates the transforming and thinking out of the box. You, as internal auditors, need to keep your teams and yourselves motivated and challenged to avoid getting dragged into a difficult recruitment market. Perhaps focus on the need to be on investing in training our people. These new skills and risks as part of this development requirement. So have we got the right people helping us provide the assurance to our stakeholders that we need with the right skills, the right capabilities? And one of the big challenges is probably about getting appropriate resources at a sensible cost, as the recruitment market has spiraled, as you will have seen from news on press and media. And people are being paid a lot of money now for relatively junior roles. Perhaps Russell will have more to say on that. Remember, if you like our Facebook streams and want to spread the word, and I'm sure you do, be sure to share today's live stream. And you can do that by clicking the share button in the corner of your screen. After all, the more the merrier. So, if you're just joining us, welcome to our live stream, Talk to Internal Audit. Today's session is about the recruitment market for internal audit and asks the question, where have all the internal auditors gone? And I'm joined by Russell Bunker, Director, Internal Audit Division, Barclay Simpson. So, over the past few years, internal audit has repositioned itself as an influential function within a company, identifying key risks and taking an advisory role to decision makers. This new importance was highlighted by the events of 2020 between the global 19 pandemic, the COVID pandemic, and the effect on the economy, the challenging labor market, new global leaders, influential social movements, all causing disruption to many, many processes and creating substantial risks. Internal auditors are in high demand these days. Recruiters and competitors are looking to snatch high quality talent with the right set of skills and background. Management understands the value talented internal auditors can provide to help them make good, timely decisions, mitigate risks, and meet strategic objectives. That means it's more important than ever to have a robust recruiting and retention program for internal audit to keep star performers from leaving for other jobs. It's also important to hire the right candidates and communicate with them so that the organization and the internal auditors they hire are both on the same page. Recent research has shown that 47% of UK employees are less career focused because of the pandemic, and 40% are concerned about work-related burnout, suggesting an extended period of staff churn could be ahead. Separately, it has been found that globally, as much as 46% of workers are considering leaving their employers because they are now able to work remotely. So I could be resident in the UK, working for a company in New York. So without further ado, let's roll up our sleeves and have a conversation with my guest today. Welcome, Russell. So may I start by asking you, is staff turnover increasing? How long does it take to fill vacant positions? Is talent management to continuously attract and retain employees working?
Hi, Liz. Thanks for the invite today. Looking forward to chatting through some of these issues with you. Is staff turnover increasing? Yes, absolutely. Staff turnover is at the probably highest level I've known, and I've worked in internal audit recruitment for 20 years. I'm not saying that the number of jobs currently is higher than normal. I was having a look through our sort of figures as a company. For internal audit, I'd say at the moment, we're probably hiring 10% more jobs currently than this sort of same period in 2019. But what we are seeing is with those same number of positions, a lot more engagement from candidates and hiring companies. So if we assume that 2019 and 2021, same number of positions, we're actually having 50% more people entering a recruitment process, and we're actually at about 250% of number of people being offered and accepting jobs. So the volume of jobs is very similar to 2 years ago, but the number of people moving is 2.5 times as high. I mean, that is an amazing statistic in terms of how much staff turnover there is at the moment. In terms of how long it takes to fill these positions, again, I did have a quick sort of look through these statistics on our database. In 2019, it took, I think, 84 days from when a position was registered with us to complete a recruitment process through to offer and acceptance. So 84 days, just shy of 3 months. In 2020, during COVID, it was as high as 111 days. So you can see the impact that COVID had there. That has obviously impacted the pent-up demand that we're seeing at the moment. And recruitment processes currently are taking an average of 56 days. So between now and pre-COVID, we've gone from 84 days 2 years ago to 56 days currently. So we've knocked nearly a month off a recruitment process cycle. So I think that is a big difference, and I think that goes to show the motivation of both candidates and companies hiring to get new people in place.
Are you sensing that candidates are unhappy where they, I mean, I presume people have a motivation for looking for a new job. Are you sensing it's career progression? Are you sensing it's more money? Are you sensing it's quality of work-life balance? Are you sensing what these things might be that are encouraging people to move?
Yeah, I think a lot of these things are personal to the individual. There's so many factors at play that it is difficult to just put a trend on it. People have had their careers impacted over the last 2 years. Maybe they haven't had the promotion they were anticipating. Maybe they haven't had the pay rise they were anticipating, with their current company. Maybe their sort of personal work situation has changed. So people have changed everything in their life, wraparound childcare situations have changed. People now are used to sort of walking the dog at lunchtime. Maybe people don't want to get back in their car or on public transport and head back into the office. Maybe their current company wants them back 4 or 5 days a week, and they're used to being in the office now just for 1 day a week. There's so many factors at play that are motivating people to look for a new position at the moment.
Are you also sensing that people are looking for jobs other than internal audit? Because I'm hearing about individuals moving into completely different roles, different worlds other than internal audit. But I'm also hearing people staying within an organization but moving into different areas of the business than perhaps they've worked before.
We are seeing that. It's maybe not quite as stark as you might have mentioned. Certainly internal auditors, the skill set are being demanded in first and second line of defence roles, especially financial services where those functions are clearly defined. Some commercial businesses are starting to define second line of defence roles more than they have historically. So yes, absolutely. I think IT auditors especially are moving into the business. Technology risk, technology controls, cyber controls, information security, data privacy, all of these areas are functions where an internal or IT auditor can move into. So yes, we are seeing that. So yeah, internal audit is suffering from something of a drain of staff into other functions.
That's really interesting, and something for the Institute perhaps to consider in terms of how we continue to encourage our members to stay within the profession and demonstrate to them what the future of the profession might look like. So that's really helpful to be aware of that. It's also interesting in our Risk in Focus report that we published, Risk in Focus 2022, that we published in September. One of the risks is around workforce fatigue and linked to cultural erosion. And I wondered, because I think there's a double-edged a bit here, isn't there? There are those people that have really hated working from home. They don't find it motivating, they don't find it creative, and of being keen to get back into an office. And then there are those that enjoy working from home for all of the reasons that you've just articulated, and are now struggling to build relationships and work well with people, who are split. So it was okay perhaps when we were all working from home, but now you've got that split, some in the office, some at home. Are you seeing that manifest itself in the recruitment market?
Yeah, there certainly is a disjoint. I think companies are starting to work towards clear policies in terms of what their working arrangements will be. So a number of companies are looking at sort of hybrid arrangements where there are clear defined amounts and numbers of days that teams will be in an office together. So, if you've got a team of 6 people, but there's no clear defined day which they're in the office, what's the point in 2 of them coming in on a Monday, 1 of them coming in on a Tuesday? You need to have all the people from the team in on the same day. So I think companies are starting to come up with policies. Often it's 50-50. So 5 days out of every 10, you're expected in the office, and there will be a clear set pattern of who comes in on what days to make sure team building, team collaboration, team culture remains within an organization.
And I think that's very much something I'm hearing, and it's certainly something, as you're not surprised, that the Institute are doing. And I'm a non-exec, and in the organisation where I am a non-exec, one of the things that they've decided is that the board meetings will be face-to-face. So there's an encouragement to bring everybody in. And the committees will be virtual, because one of the things we've already discovered in a relatively short space of time is it's really quite challenging if you've got some in the room and some on Teams. A bit like in the days when you used to have some people on the phone and they always got forgotten and nobody ever heard them when they wanted to contribute. Again, are you sensing that sort of coming through?
Absolutely. There's no point in bringing people into the office if there's only part of the team in the office. Everybody has to be in on the same day. Otherwise, there's no benefit to it. You're just bringing people into the office for the sake of bringing people into the office. What is achieved through collaboration, through conversation in person, far outweighs the time spent on Zoom or Microsoft Teams, whatever it may be. That in-person collaboration, information sharing, it has massive advantages. So companies do need to have those clear policies about people being in on the same day.
And have people said that's the reason why I'm looking? I don't like I like my company, I like my manager, the salary's fine. I really don't like what they're doing now. You talked earlier about walking the dog at lunchtime, picking up children from school, all of those sorts of things. Are you sensing that that's now more of a driver than salary, career progression?
I think at the early part of this year, a lot of people were very set on their new working arrangements. They didn't have to go into the office, so their lives could be more flexible, so that if they wanted to start work at 7:30 in the morning and finish at 4:30, as long as they're getting their work done in the number of hours that they're contracted, absolutely fine to do that. Once we start heading back to the office, you're starting to put, I guess, shackles on people in terms of you need to be leaving your house at a certain time, you need to be on public transport or in the car at a certain time. So I think at the beginning of the year, people were a lot more hesitant to look at new jobs unless all of the factors that you've mentioned were satisfied. Why give up a position where you've been for 4 or 5 years for something that's not as flexible as you have at the time? What we're seeing now is, as companies are defining those core hours, core days in the office, people's attitudes to that have softened. So the flexibility of working does need to be there, but it's not as stringent as people were asking for earlier in the year. So we are actually heading back to a scenario where the job opportunity, the company, the culture of that company, the possibility of promotion are superseding, in terms of importance, the absolute flexibility of being able to work the days you want to in the office, because people are accepting now that there are going to be those core days where they have to come in. Okay,
thank you ever so much for that. Are you seeing specific skills being recruited for? I'm thinking about the Bayes White paper, came out in March, talked about a profession called corporate auditing, that was right, where they were looking for subject matter experts to provide assurance. Are you sensing organizations are looking for, I don't know, climate risk experts, cybersecurity experts, culture experts? rather than internal auditors, but these subject matter experts to work in internal audit?
Okay, some of those areas that you have mentioned, yes, absolutely. You know, information, cybersecurity, technology, this is top of the priorities for a lot of organizations, if not all of organizations. So the skill set of an IT auditor is massively in demand at the moment. There are so many more jobs than there are actively seeking jobs, IT auditors. Massive bottleneck there. In terms of some of the other areas that you've mentioned, corporate culture, climate change, yes, companies and audit departments are starting to think about those and look at those, and will they be going onto the audit plans in the future? Absolutely. Are we getting companies coming to us saying we need an expert in auditing culture or environmental impact? Not really. We're being asked for if an auditor has that experience as part of a wider skill set, fantastic, but there aren't really yet that many people that are dedicated to auditing culture or environmental impact. So yes to some of those questions, no to others in terms of skill set. What we are seeing, because of the nature of working from home on a hybrid basis, it is actually the level of individual that we're being requested to hire. So it is people that are very much self-sufficient. So people that can deliver an end-to-end audit with minimal supervision because they're going to be working from home. It is that level of individual that's being more demanded than, say, a trainee internal auditor, somebody who needs a lot of supervision because it's a lot more difficult to train an auditor when you're remote half the time.
That's a really valid point about the more junior posts and the demand for the more senior people. Are you seeing any impact on, the drive for apprentices, as particularly in internal audit? Is that something that employers are asking about?
If I'm being honest, it's not something we've had a lot of conversations about. As a recruitment company, we wouldn't recruit individuals as a trainee apprenticeship. But even the conversations that we're having, we haven't seen or heard much in that regard. Okay.
Thank you very much. That's interesting. Are you sensing that there is a movement and therefore a demand for the CAEs, heads of internal audit? Are you seeing them moving?
Yes, there is and has been a reasonable amount of movement, certainly in certain sectors, with chief auditors moving. I think it has been a little bit of a merry-go-round in certain industries, especially. What has driven that? It could be that the importance of internal audit has meant an upgrading of the chief auditor position. We're also seeing, because of Brexit, companies that had maybe a European company that had a branch in the UK, they're having to set up a new entity with a chief auditor of the regulated entity for the UK. We're also seeing a little bit of a cycle with some organisations that have historically co-sourced or outsourced their internal audit, bringing in a head of internal audit for the first time. All of these factors are creating more demand for the want of a better word, head or chief internal auditor.
Okay, fascinating. Thank you ever so much for sharing that. Can I just remind you all, if you're just joining us, welcome to our live stream, Talk to Internal Audit. Today's session is about the internal audit recruitment market and hopes to answer the question, where have all the internal auditors gone? I'm joined by Russell Bunker, Director, Internal Audit Division at Barclay Simpson. So building on what you were saying earlier, Russell, and if you didn't hear it, you need to go back and listen. Are you sensing that there are increased redundancies? I'm thinking about, the retail sector, some of the high streets have changed beyond recognition, organizations have moved from, something on the high street, have been bought by organizations that want online, slightly different skill set perhaps for internal auditors. Are you sensing that in the recruitment market?
Look, there have obviously been quite a lot of corporate activity, mergers, takeovers. As you say, certain sectors have been hit hard by the change in dynamics. What we are seeing people being made redundant from the internal audit profession as a result of that. But what we're not typically seeing is internal auditors sitting at home for long periods of time. So the skill set of internal audit, I think, is a lot more transferable than maybe other professions. So, if you are working for a retail organization in internal audit, as long as you're doing corporate-based audits rather than maybe stores-based audits, you are going to find another job, maybe in a profession, in an internal audit role, in an industry that is different, that has maybe struggled to hire internal auditors. So, it could be that you move from the retail sector into the manufacturing sector or the FMCG sector or something along those lines. But, yes, there are being redundancies seen, but we're not seeing internal auditors sitting at home for extended periods.
Okay. That's good to know. If any of you are internal auditors who've been made redundant or were thinking about looking for another job, it might be a more dynamic market than perhaps you had initially thought until Russell started sharing some of his thinking with us. We talked earlier about internal auditors perhaps moving out of internal audit into the business in a variety of different roles. And I know one is often, an internal auditor who is an accountant, a CCAB, moving perhaps into finance. Are you seeing internal auditors either moving into other areas of the business or other areas of the business recruiting from the market, internal auditors into the business rather than into internal audit?
So on that, yes, the internal audit skill set in any organization that values risk and controls, an internal auditor is seen as a very valuable commodity. Are we seeing internal auditors moving into line finance roles? Not so much. Are we seeing them moving into risk and control roles? Yes. Are we seeing them moving into things like project assurance? Yes. I think, we've got UK Sarbanes-Oxley coming into view. Companies are starting to prepare for that. So, you will see internal auditors moving into maybe Sarbanes-Oxley compliance roles maybe next year, but not so much sort of financial control roles. It's more process improvement, project assurance, these types of roles.
Okay. I couldn't help but smile when you were talking about Sarbanes-Oxley and organizations recruiting, because I can wind my mind back to 2002 when US SOX came in. Mm-hmm. And, some of the organizations that had a US perhaps head office that were based in the UK were recruiting people on silly day rates, weren't they, for 2002, because they wanted to get internal auditors in who had some SOX experience or were prepared to train very quickly into that. So I guess that might be something we can watch out for in the Bayes White paper.
I think, I was recruiting in 2002 internal auditors as well. I recruited a huge number of interim Sarbanes-Oxley consultants. I think the difference between 2002 and the UK SOX, in 2002, nobody knew what they were doing. And a huge amount of money was spent on this. Some companies did it really well, others did it terribly, and they spent a huge amount of money. 20 years later, Sarbanes-Oxley compliance has been business as usual. There is expertise out there now. So if you are a company that has never had to be compliant with Sarbanes-Oxley from the US or from Japan, that's okay, because you're going to be able to find somebody to do your UK Sarbanes-Oxley compliance who has been. It's going to be a very different hiring landscape in that regard, and I don't think the panic and the high day rates that were being paid will need to be paid this time around.
I think that's interesting, because certainly from a professional perspective, as an institute, we're saying that internal audit should be providing assurance around UK SOX if it comes in, rather than rolling up their sleeves and doing some of the testing. So you're right, what we might see is a bit of a split. We might see some internal auditors staying within the internal audit function to become assurance providers around what the business is doing around SOX. And there might be other internal auditors that get recruited into the business to support the finance function, perhaps, or second line functions in undertaking the work needed to create a control environment that lends itself to strengthening financial control.
Absolutely. It does depend on how a company's control, risk, internal audit capability is set up. Some internal audit departments include Sarbanes-Oxley, some do not. So it's just going to be dependent on the individuality of each company and how they're set up.
Yeah. Yes, and I think that's true. And I think, we're all speculating at the moment as to what's going to come from the consultation. I think when we start seeing some concrete recommendations coming out of it, then we'll be in a better place to think about what the future might look like. So what, in your sense, is the impact of the new working model? And whether it's hybrid, continuing to work from home, back in the office, whatever the future looks like, there's a potential risk that the culture of the internal audit function may change because of all of this. Do you have any thoughts, perhaps based on conversations you've had with employers and employees, as to how they might be striving to keep the culture alive when people are remote, hybrid, and you're not interacting in person?
Yeah, I think, as we've mentioned earlier, companies are starting to define their working models. In the majority of cases, we are looking at a hybrid model, 50% in the office, 50% from home, or sometimes 2 days, 3 days in the office and home. It all depends on the company. There are obviously other companies that are demanding their staff back in the office 5 days a week. And there are other companies that are saying you can work from home as much as you like. It absolutely depends on the organization, what people are doing. In terms of how companies can look to keep the culture alive, for an internal audit, internal auditors, I think if they've been working internal audit for a period of time, they can deliver an end-to-end audit. They know that the tires need to be kicked. They need to be interacting in person with stakeholders. It's much easier for a stakeholder to avoid maybe difficult questions over a Zoom meeting than it is in person. You can get more from their body language if you're meeting in person. So I think internal auditors do appreciate that time in the office, time with stakeholders is needed. In terms of what companies can do, for an increasing culture, I think number of days in the office to be designated, and say a Monday, a Wednesday, a Friday, you have to be in the office. The team needs to be in the office on all of those days. You can do what you want on a Monday and Tuesday, come in if you want, stay at home if you want. I think things like team events, it could be an away day, it could be as just a smaller thing as saying, right, on a Wednesday when everybody's in the office, we will all go and take lunch together, and it will be part of the team budget for whatever, all of these little things are required to keep collaboration. I think time for meetings when you are at home need to be instilled, so you don't just leave people at home on their own all day without any input or interaction, depending on their seniority. So there should be some touch points in terms of keeping up with the work that they're doing without being overbearing. Nobody wants to be micromanaged, but there should be touch points so people don't feel isolated.
Some really good thoughts there. So moving on to something slightly differently, do you think organizations' core values, I'm hearing quite a difference in terms of maturity or age of individuals, in terms of core values, mission, influencing an individual's decision to accept or reject an offer of employment? Do you think that's materializing itself?
I think the culture and mission statement of a company is extremely important. I think it absolutely does influence people's decision about whether to apply for a job with that organization. I don't think we get to the point where their core values and mission statement will make somebody accept or not accept it, because if somebody is not bought into that organization's culture and mission statement, they're not going to apply for the job in the first place. So I think that is a hurdle that is one of the first hurdles rather than one of the latter stage recruitment hurdles that we need to look at. So I think once somebody decides that company has the culture or mission statement or that is attractive to them, they will enter the recruitment process, and then it becomes the people that they're meeting, what the job will be, what their responsibilities will be, where this job can take them, what they're going to learn. All of those things will be the important factor in whether they accept a job offer or not.
Okay. That's a good, I think, definition here, and also maybe some good advice to anybody listening is make sure you've done your homework about the organization before you go for interview. Don't go for interview, be offered the job and then go, well, I don't like your mission or your culture or whatever, because that's going to irritate people. It's wasting your time, it's wasting Russell's time, and it's potentially wasting a potential employer's time. And I always say to people, remember, it's a very small population is internal audit, and these things often get round, and you might cross paths with somebody further on in your career who remembers that you wasted their time because you didn't do your homework. So Russell, can I ask you some advice then? I'm sitting here thinking that maybe I want to throw my hat in the ring. I would like some move. I'd like to do something a bit different for a different organization, perhaps in a different sector, like more responsibility. Well, what would your advice be to somebody looking for a role in internal audit?
So if somebody's looking to come into internal audit from another discipline, is that what you're asking, Liz?
No, sorry, I didn't make my question very clear. No, within internal audit, and I'm thinking of I want to spread my wings, move from this organization somewhere else. Okay.
Yeah, so I think, internal audit is a profession that is portable. You can move to different organizations that offer, different industries, slightly different skill sets, slightly different focus. But sometimes those ambitions that you have may be 2 steps away rather than 1 step. So you maybe need to determine what is my goal here? What is my 4 or 5 year ambition? It's to be 2 steps away or 1 step away, whether that can be achieved. So I would say if somebody wants to move from working in internal audit for a car manufacturing company to working in an investment bank in internal audit, they're not going to be able to do that in one job move. What they maybe need to try and work out is, how can I make that transition from one industry which is very different to another industry? And there will be industries in between that, maybe it's retail financial services that could look at somebody from a car manufacturing background, and then from retail banking you move into and investment banking. It's not going to be a straight, easy switch, but there may be opportunities to move from that. If you're auditing something like group functions, that's much more portable than it is if you need to have specific product knowledge of an industry. So there are ways to achieve it. Also, people often want to move from a senior manager position to a chief auditor position or a head of internal audit, and that's the hardest move for people to make. And we do speak to a lot of people that are, absolutely keen to get their first head of internal audit position. What I would say in that regard is maybe think, okay, you're working for a FTSE 100 company at the moment, you want your first head of internal audit job, you may need to look at a smaller company with a much smaller internal audit function, and that's going to be your first internal audit head of position. And then you can look to maybe move back to a FTSE 250 or a FTSE 100 after you've got that head of internal audit position. Similarly, earlier in your career, people are often looking for that first move from delivery to management. Again, you may need to move to a smaller organization to achieve that. You work in an organization where there's fantastic internal audit processes in place. Okay, I now need to manage people. That may not be available where you are. So you can get that if you go and move to another company that maybe is smaller and will appreciate what you've gained from that bigger company.
Okay, so it's not simply, I want this, therefore I will go out and get it. I may have to talk quite honestly with someone like you, Russell, so that I can plan how I'm going to get to where I need to be, rather than assume I can do one leap and I'm there.
Absolutely. We've been recruiting internal auditors for 30 years. We've seen many people move from their first job in internal audit after qualifying, as a chartered internal auditor or as an accountant. They move into internal audit for the first time. And we've seen many people go from that first internal audit job to being the chief internal auditor of a FTSE 100. It doesn't happen immediately. So yes, you do need to plan that. And Barclay Simpson as a recruiter, specialist recruiter, we can help manage people through that process, through multiple moves to get to where they want. Often we do see and speak to people though that their expectation of a move is a lot higher than maybe achievable. It's not saying that you as an individual are not capable of doing that job. It's just that you might not have quite the full set of skills and experience that a company's looking for, and the competition that you might face for that position.
Thank you for that, Russell. So my last question is, we started out today saying, where have all the internal auditors gone? Because that's what I'm hearing constantly from CAEs, heads of internal audit firms. Where have they gone?
Well, they're still there. You just got to find them. We haven't had a massive evaporation of internal auditors. It's just a case of, I think, maybe 2 years ago, people would apply for more jobs. LinkedIn has massively increased its footprint over the last few years. And, if somebody's got their profile on LinkedIn, they don't necessarily apply for as many jobs. So they wait to be tapped on the shoulder and approached about jobs. So the internal auditors are there. It's just a case of unearthing them and presenting something to them that they want.
And here was me thinking, now Doctor Who's back on the TV. Doctor Who was stealing all of the internal auditors and taking them to another planet.
Well, they are in other functions, as we talked about. Some have moved off into different functions, but then we are seeing other people moving the other way, people from operational risk or credit risk or anti-money laundering or compliance moving into internal audit. The population of internal audit has not been eradicated or diminished. You've just got to know where to look.
Thank you ever so much, Russell. So may I just remind you, if you're just joining us, welcome to our live stream, Talk to Internal Audit. Today's session was about the internal audit recruitment market and carried the question, where have all the auditors gone? Our guest speaker was Russell Bunker, Director, Internal Audit Division from Barclay Simpson. So may I say a huge thank you to you, Russell, for joining me today and for sharing your thoughts with us. Lots for us all to reflect upon and perhaps share with our internal audit colleagues. The live stream is available afterwards for those of your friends or colleagues who may have missed the live version on the Institute's Facebook channel. So please follow all of the exciting things the Institute is doing on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. And I'm sure you will have seen on all of those social media platforms lots about our internal audit conference. So make sure you have a read of what you're seeing out there that will mean that you'll be up to speed with what some really great speakers are saying. As a member, you have access to our latest edition of our Audit and Risk magazine, which is now available on our website. It was published yesterday. Our flagship internal audit conference demonstrated how we can blend traditional and new ways of providing support to ever more members simultaneously. So we're focusing a lot on that. More importantly, the conference has enabled us to further develop the sense of community that has proved important to many people in the past year. And we hope that this will encourage more members to share their experiences and concerns to benefit us all in the future. The years ahead may be tough. There is certainly a lot of uncertainty about what's going on, particularly in the business world, but they should also be exciting. So brace yourself, it's going to be a bumpy ride, but an exhilarating ride. The highlights in our magazine included the Audit and Risk Awards. The nominations are now open, so have a look and think about whether you want to submit a nomination. It also looks at the future of internal audit, the challenges that we all face, and about how internal audit can support new business ventures. In case you've not already checked it out, the Institute's brand new community hub is there for you to get involved in. It acts as a gateway to community-focused activities and endeavours. It includes our virtual forums, regional networks, and volunteering opportunities. And you'll also find all our special interest groups. So if there are any that pique your interest, reach out. Our community hub is open to all members and non-members. So watch the space as it continues to take shape over the coming months. We also have a training course on auditing human resources and people risk. And perhaps that's something that we need to be thinking about in terms of providing assurance to our organization. People are regularly described as an organization's greatest asset, and that includes internal auditors, but they can also be a source of significant risk. The course will help you provide effective professional insight and internal audit assurance over people risks and human resource management. You will develop an understanding of the role and importance of a modern HR function and how it should support the achievement of the organization's objectives. As we move forward into the new future, please don't forget to look out for Talk to Internal Audit. All of the live streams we did in 2020 can be found on your YouTube channel. So if you haven't yet watched any, be sure to subscribe. A link to our YouTube channel can be found in the comments section. And we will continue to share with you our thoughts regarding specific challenges along with inputs from colleagues, members and guests. So stay in touch. Following COP26, please look out for our next Talk to Internal Audit, which will be on climate risk assurance and the challenges that the current economic environment is presenting. If you have any specific topics you'd like us to cover, please share your thoughts, either in the comments box or email me direct at liz.sandwith@iia.org.uk. Remember, talk to internal audit. The Institute is listening. Thank you. Thank you, Russell. Thank you for being with us today, and stay safe. Bye.